Hello and welcome to the Legendary Ladies podcast. This week we are talking about not a TV show, but a movie of Wynonna Earp. So we did a pilot pod, which I guess we can try to remember to link in our description. I want to say like earlier this year,
Yeah, it
when
was
it was
recent enough.
announced. Yeah, when it was announced that this movie was coming out earlier this year, we were like, oh, maybe this is now the time to do a pilot pod of Wynonna Earp. And so that's all. So I think it'll be interesting because I think we're gonna all be coming from at this movie from different perspectives. But
Mhm.
this movie came out on Tubi, which is a free app that you
There's
can
a
get,
lot of stuff on there,
and
and
there
I'm
is a
not
lot of
I was
stuff on Tubi.
surprised.
I was clicking around while I was finding Winona, and I was like, "Oh, Tubi has that. Tubi has this." So if Tubi is deceptive in the amount of TV shows and movies that it has, but Tubi basically gave a free bill to be like, "Hey, come and do your movie over here." Now there's the door is kind of left open. Will there be more Wynonna Earp? It sounds like only if this movie does well on Tubi, and we never know what does well means to any of these streaming sites. So
Well, and how are we supposed to tell anyway? Like back in the day, you could have, and you still have technically, like Nielsen ratings, and I mean, the Daily sends out a report every once in a while. I can look to see if Winona Earp popped up at all,
I feel like
but
it's
yeah,
I
really
don't think it
new.
did.
Well, and I thought that was, and
Yeah.
that's kind of a big topic I wanted to talk about for this episode. Is that I thought they literally had a comment here, and I thought it was interesting, where they're like, "It's not a reunion, it's a reboot,"
It's a
and
reboot.
or
yeah,
like a
it's
I
a
thought that was
reboot.
relaunch.
really cute.
And I thought that's what was really interesting about this movie. And I think what actually succeeds for this movie is that it does just feel like a long episode of like
It
a
does.
finale of the show. And I think sometimes
Im-
reunions make
Mhm.
a mistake of doing that, where it's like too cheap or too expensive. But we're gonna say, Amy.
No, I was gonna say immediately, like that's
No.
what I felt right away. I was like, oh, this feels like an episode of a TV show. And
Yeah,
it was kind of nice. It was kind of refreshing. So first off, before we get deep into the
I did want to
episode,
read. Yeah, I wanted to read Danny's comment that says, "Well, if the lesbians have anything to say about it, it will do well." And I like hopped on Reddit after I watched the movie to see like what people were saying about it, and a lot of people were like, "Make sure you just stream it in the background all day." That's what I'm doing. I just have it
Mm.
on in another room. I'm not even watching it. I just got to get Tubi their stream. So if you feel very passionate about more Winona, just toss it on, I guess, a TV in another room, question mark, and just let it
yeah,
go.
we'll make it
So
work.
yeah, so I want to go around to see everybody. We talked about this when we watched the pilot. Since we watched the pilot, I decided to really, it was time for me to buckle down and rewatch the whole show.
Which is why
And
we made this episode a little later,
You
so we had an
which
expert on the whole show.
I rewatched the
wait,
whole show.
you rewatched the whole thing.
Whole show. Now, to be fair, I started when we recorded that Wynonna Earp episode, and I got to about like mid season 2, and I was like, "This is great! Like 1 to 2 episodes a week feels luxurious." And then it was announced that that the movie was coming out in like a week, and I had to slam through 2 seasons of television in about like a week and a half, which is again,
That was
yes,
hard.
this is why this episode was a little late, because I was like, you guys, could I please just finish my rewatch? I'm only 1 season left because it turned out that, which I remembered as I was going along, because of the timing of when the second part of season 4 came out, I actually never ended up watching it. So that was
I
my
remember
first
that.
time through the late season 4 episodes, which was wild. And also, I had the really strange experience of having watched the series finale for the first time, and then like this movie 1 day later, which is
That's
not.
actually really kind of cool.
Yeah, so I feel like maybe I am going to end up being a little bit, weirdly enough, more harsh towards this, because I like have it very fresh in my mind, the series finale, and I'm just gonna
Hmm.
keep comparing and contrasting. Whereas, okay, did you guys watch anything past the first episode?
Yeah, I've seen up to like season 2, and then I think I
Okay, yeah.
dropped off. So I've seen a good chunk of it. So like when I was watching this, again, it felt like a Winona Earp episode. It felt like one long episode, but I just thought, because it's been a while, I love Winona Earp's villains. Like sometimes I like when they're kooky, but I never thought that part of the plot was very interesting. So when that part of the plot wasn't very interesting here, I was just like, that's just kind of Wynonna Earp. Like, you're kind of here for Wayhaught. You're kind of here for the interpersonal relationships. And for the most part, I think they worked. I was actually curious for like major Wayhaught fans, how they felt about them having conflict. I thought it was interesting because it shows like their relationship's not perfect. And I enjoyed Haught's relationship with Winona. Like, I thought their friendship being a little bit more of a core of this episode was really interesting. But there is conflict, and sometimes people don't really love conflict in their romances. I'd be curious to hear how people felt about that.
I'm curious in general to hear what like the overall fans are. So I have not seen anything besides that first episode and anything that pops up on Instagram. So I know enough.
You've seen it all.
Instagram is effective, so I know enough about
So all
things.
the Wayhaught scenes, then, I would guess.
Yes, like my Instagram is not quite that algorithm, but it's the important stuff. So I'm aware of everything that happens. I go to Comic-Con. I'm a
You've got the
worldly
vibes,
individual.
basically. You're working off of the
I had
vibes.
the vibes. So I knew the characters. I knew the general idea with Alice. Like, I knew the story of the kid. I knew enough to kind of to be able to follow it.
Yeah.
Morgan, I'm curious. Did you feel like I want to know if I'm on par with what your thoughts of finale to movie are? Did the finale do some things and then this movie undid those things?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what happened? Because I feel like that's what happened. I don't even know what's going on. And I felt like I feel like this is rewriting Wynonna Earp history, and I would love to know what the fans think because I was annoyed that they killed Doc Holliday.
Okay.
Well, that's not, dude, that death. I was surprised by it.
We're gonna get into spoilers here. We're gonna talk about the whole movie. I do think that it was my big issue with the movie was that they killed off Doc Holliday, which felt
I'm not okay with that, and I don't even watch the show.
I'm not okay with it. It felt unnecessary. He's one of the iconic characters of the show, and in a special that you're doing because the fans love the show so much, and you want to bring it back, killing off a main character like that feels like it's a mistake, because it kind of, I was like, they either have to undo this if they get any more TV shows or movies.
Which I think they did to undo it. I think they're like, well, we want people to kind of riot for us to be back.
Like you gotta want more so that we'll undo it. And it's like, we would have just wanted more anyway. Like, the fandom for Wynonna Earp is known to be very rabid and very into the show.
I think sci-fi only existed because of that show.
It's possible they would have continued streaming it from the other room, regardless of whether or not Doc died. So, like, killing Doc did feel like a little bit of a kick in the teeth unnecessarily, and it really reminded me. I don't know if either of you guys watched Veronica Mars.
Oh yeah. Or what's so funny, Morgan, Phil is doing a rewatch right now, my business partner, of Veronica Mars. Oh, well, he actually never watched it, so he's doing his full watch. And it was so interesting for him to like watch the cliffhanger of season 3 and then just like go into the movie. I'm like, that's weird because had to wait 10 years for that.
Yeah, I had the same experience a couple years ago, which is that Mike, my husband, had never watched Veronica Mars, and I was like, we have to fix you. So we started and we watched all of it like in order. But this movie reminded me in a lot of ways of the Veronica Mars reboot like season, where they like bring everybody back, and then at the end, again, spoiler alert for the Veronica Mars reboot season that has been out for several years, they kill Logan, and I never saw fan reaction go from "Yay, we got more of the thing we love" to "No."
I never finished that season because people hated the show so much. I watched the pilot, and then I got caught up that week, and I didn't watch it. And then people were like, "This is the worst thing I ever saw in my life," so I just didn't watch it.
And that was why people got so mad, me included, as a Veronica Mars fan, that they would just bring it back to like ruthlessly kill a main character that people like. And this also felt sort of a piece too, where it's like, yeah, we have to up the stakes, but like there were really other ways I think they could have accomplished that instead of killing off one of their main characters. And it felt I don't know, just like when they they kill him. He's like a human now. He's sort of been all different things within the series, but they kill him off. And then at the end of the movie, she's like talking to another character, Jeremy, and she's saying like, we better fix this. And I was like human mortality? He got shot. It wasn't like a demon dragged him to hell or something. It just felt like a strange way to kill him off and then to be like, well, clearly something's wrong. We have to fix him. I was like, do you? I don't know. That doesn't feel like, what are you going to bring him back as, a sexy zombie? Like what's evolution there?
Well, so they can do the thing that
It
they
is
do in a lot of
sci-fi.
other shows. They bring like his spirit back.
They'll
they can
figure
put his spirit
some
back
way
in a
out.
different body. And that's their way to like not have the same actor if they
I was
don't
about to
want
say
the
it
same
better
actor.
be the same actor.
Oh, that's the only
because
reason why he's
honestly,
good.
I have
legitimately not interested if it's not.
I found an interview because here's the thing. I watched the episode and I was like, damn, I don't even know the show. And I'm here for this like conflict between Doc and Winona. I'm liking them like going through their shit and like figuring it out and being like, we're going to homestead it here on the property that is apparently demon proof. And I was like, dang, I like really like this. And then he dies. And I literally Googled that. I was like, is that Holiday really dead? And sure enough, he is. And interestingly, the actor who plays him, Tim Rosen? Is that how you pronounce it? R-O-Z-O-N?
Rosen, maybe? I'm actually not sure. It's been a while since I've watched any stuff.
He did an interview. They all did an interview for Den of Geek, and he said, I've kind of known from day one. He said, I was there from the beginning when this idea was being thrown around.
Wow.
And I may have even fought for it.
Oh.
Apparently, according to Emily Andrus, the showrunner, they said fought for it might actually be something of an understatement. Apparently, Doc's death was in large part Rosen's idea.
Wow.
That's so
he probably just
funny.
doesn't want to come back.
Apparently,
I would
Tim
be
said-
surprised by that, though, honestly, because he has been so involved in all of the Wynonna Earp stuff, including like writing tie-in comics and things like that.
Yeah.
My guess is I wonder if Tubi was like, you need to have like a major character death for this to be dramatic, and maybe Tim was like, it could be me, it could be Doc.
They said that like he goes on to kind of talk about how he's like, I have a story for you. Doc dies. That's an interesting story. So maybe they were having trouble finding the clincher of the episode. Like, yeah, we defeated the bad guy, and like, what makes this a big deal? So he said, overall, we left things perfectly at the end of season 4. Finally, it's just the two of them, free and heading towards their daughter. I mean, what else do you want? But life isn't that. We can't always expect to get where we want to go. So it almost sounds like that person who's like, I really love this, but also like, I kind of want to see what we can get away with. Like, I want to
let's
break some hearts.
Yeah, exactly. Let's break some stuff and see what happens.
Which is interesting and weird for this fandom, though. Like, the whole point that this movie's back is because they brought it back. Because so why get fans upset?
Yeah, that was kind of, I guess that was sort of my deal, is that if this was the first movie in like a planned movie trilogy, or if they had been told like that they were going to have another, maybe like a season 5 or a reboot season, I feel like I would be more generous to it. But from what I understand, it's basically like, if this movie does well, there could be the possibility of more, but there's no guarantee. And with no guarantee, it is kind of messed up to kill off a fan favorite.
Especially on Tubi. Who the hell? There is no guarantee to Tubi.
Tubi clearly has no budget, if we remember what the Hellhounds looked like in this movie.
Oh my god.
That was my biggest scream laugh of the whole movie.
And I was like, oh, this is Wynonna Earp. Look how bad the effects are. Look how bad everything
Again,
is.
having rewatched the whole show like back to back to back, I was like, yes, the budget. I remember thee well. But honestly, the Tubi movie made the budget on sci-fi look like a Spielberg movie.
Like HBO.
See, I hadn't seen Wynonna Earp in a long time, so I was just like, yeah, this feels like what was on sci-fi.
Yeah,
I just went with it.
It feels on par.
Yeah,
I have an idea.
the hellhounds thing to me made me laugh really hard because they didn't need to be called hellhounds. You could have been like, it could have been zombies. I've seen better makeup at like the Zombie Walk in Asbury. It
Yes.
could have just been a humanoid creature, but they were like, no, these dogs are barking. I was like, those dogs are like a bunch of scraps from Joanne Fabrics. I can see their boots.
Over a bunch of extras.
Yes, I can see their
Yeah.
boots. I don't believe it's a dog when I can see the boots.
Oh, I don't think they were supposed to be dogs. Like, I think they were supposed to be humans.
Oh, okay, because that was
Like-
confusing
like
because they kept on calling them hellhounds.
They're hellhounds, but like I've read a book where hellhounds are people. Like they're
okay.
basically they're decapitated like zombie-esque people who have been taken over by hellhound spirits.
Oh,
So
okay.
I don't think they were meant to be actual dogs.
That helps a little
honestly,
bit.
I don't think that was the point.
Yeah, I was just like, these effects. We are getting really really tight on our budget. Clearly, if we've just got put the extras in a bunch of scraps of fabric.
So I have a theory. I have a theory that they're not going to bring back Wynonna Earp. I think they're going to bring back Waverly Earp. And I think they're
Ooh.
going to
that would sell even more.
her in her yes. And I think it's going to be like her on her like global adventure with whatever this like security.
But do we
want to
see that without Hot?
black
That's
badge.
the issue.
So
Well, they could do both of them. Imagine that she gets recruited because now Winona can take over as the sheriff.
So this is
they could
interesting.
both take over.
Were either of you guys confused why Nicole didn't at any point like offer to go with her?
I thought she really liked being sheriff because I haven't seen in a while. So I was like, maybe this is her dedication.
It wasn't weird to me.
Okay, good. That's interesting because I was like, I'm really interested to see how this played for them because the reason that she's like, you have to go without me and spread your wings and I wish I could go with you is that she literally can't go with her because at the end of season 4 she offered to like take Waverly's place as like this show gets very lore heavy. But Waverly is like part angel because her dad was an angel. Of course, this makes perfect sense. Let's just go with it. And so the Garden of Eden.
Her dad, not the
happens
Earp, right?
to be in purgatory. Yeah, she's only half sister with Winona. It turns out
she's not a real Earp.
She's not a real Earp. It's that becomes like a big thing at like the end of season 1 and into season 2.
I remember that.
Yeah. So she
did they share the same mom or the same dad?
Same mom. Yeah.
Oh.
So she's not an Earp at all, actually. She has no Earp blood in her. She's 0% Earp. But basically the Garden of Eden, they have a whole thing with like the Garden of Eden in like seasons, I think 3 and 4. And at the end of season 4, Waverly maybe has to go back into the garden forever to protect the garden and purgatory. And instead Nicole is like, what if I'm the guardian? And they're like, okay, but if you take that on to save Waverly, you can never leave the Ghost River Triangle.
And Waverly knows that?
And she's like, okay, chill. And so she takes that on to save Waverly. The reason Nicole can't go with Waverly is she literally can't leave the Ghost River Triangle, and she literally can't leave because of Waverly, in which place this really tainted my view of the storyline of this movie because I was like, oh, are you feeling a little restless? Maybe she is too.
I didn't know that at all. That makes sense. Again, it's hard to give criticism to something like Wayhaught because I think they do queer representation really well. There's like a lot of fun jokes. There's a lot of just like, again, it's cool to actually see conflict. So in those moments, I'm like, it's really just so much above and beyond what other shows do. And same thing for Doc's character. Like, I think he's a really good male character within a feminist show. Like I just think it's a really cool show about, feminism in a lot of ways. So I enjoyed that aspect. But yeah, this arc, again, there was something like itching in the back of my brain being like, do people like this? There is something that feels a little wrong.
Yes. And it was one of those things where I was like, how is this going to play for people who haven't seen the show and don't have that backstory? And how is it going to play for people who do? And I think that like, obviously they didn't want to mention it in the movie because they didn't want to get into it because they're trying to make it kind of new viewer friendly as well.
But
Although
is it?
I would argue it probably wasn't that new viewer friendly. I don't know that if I didn't have like if I hadn't rewatched Winona or if I hadn't watched it or had some background in the show and I just gone into it completely cold, I think I would have been real confused like pretty fast. I do think it makes sense why they chose like a villain from Winona's like backstory to kind of be able to like tell new viewers what her backstory was. Like all that stuff made a lot of sense to me. But also, yeah, like there's only so much you can do to make something that dense new viewer friendly. And so like the reason that Nicole can't leave is that Nicole literally can't leave. But they never mention that in the movie because they clearly don't want to get into like, as we all know, you're half angel and I like, I protected you from having to go into the garden. Like a new viewer's like, I'm sorry, what? Like, so they left all that out, but I feel like it's needed backstory for that story to make more sense and be more affecting. That like, it's not that Nicole is purposefully holding her back, it's that Nicole literally can't leave.
Yeah, and I think
What's interesting.
it's
Sorry,
so
go ahead, Kat.
Amy, you're totally
Yeah.
frozen. I'm glad your
I was
audio is
gonna-
still working.
I was about to tell you that.
I'm
Go on,
completely
Amy.
frozen.
You are, but look, you're talking, so go ahead. Like I can hear you.
Oh, great. You can hear me. That's what's important. What's interesting is it didn't feel unuser friendly to me. Like you guys are mentioning that it felt a little unused, like you're wondering if it was, even though I've only seen one episode and like I'm like Earp adjacent, like I know enough. It wasn't super unfriendly. I really generally enjoyed it. Like and the other thing too is the Nicole or the hot. Wait, hold on. It's Nicole Hot.
It's
and
Nicole Hot,
Waverly
yeah.
Earp. Okay.
And Waverly,
That's
yeah.
not confusing. That part wasn't weird to me because I feel like I watch so many procedural like FBI shows that it's normal for those like a CIA person to leave their house for like a year deployment or something like that. So to me it made sense that she's like, hey, for a year we're just going to be in a long distance marriage relationship. I was like, I feel like I just watched that on Emily in Paris. Like this happens.
Oui. I saw Danny in the chat also said if you were a new viewer, you would assume Nicole just really loved being sheriff, and that's why she didn't go with. Yes, exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, that's it. Like she's really into her job, and like this is her home and her family. Like this norms.
I think my main criticism is of having the characters kind of implicitly blame Nicole for Waverly not going anywhere or doing other things. Like you have Winona being like, yeah, you have kind of Winona talking to Nicole being like, you're holding her back without ever mentioning that backstory of like, well, not on purpose. Like not on purpose. I think if you had if the storyline had just been more about Waverly like wanting to go out but feeling guilty about having to leave Nicole behind, that was the story that they were sort of telling. But by having some of the characters kind of say to Nicole like you're sort of part of the reason why she's like can't spread her wings and fly, that didn't sit great with me, given that like Nicole gave up her ability to ever travel outside of the Ghost River Triangle to save Waverly's life. So I was like, I don't know if we're talking about Nicole being selfish right now or just sort of the reality of their situation.
It also didn't feel organic. Like what Winona comes in and it's like she's crafting lots. She clearly feels stifled. I was like, I don't understand that. A conversation would have been nice. Even a moment where she's like standing in the front of the ranch, like with her arms crossed, looking out the horizon. Like that would give me more indication. I was like, so she's crafting?
Yeah, I also
your
had
indicator.
I just thought she had a new hobby.
Yeah, exactly. She's got the loom and everything. I had a little bit of an issue with like Waverly's characterization in this movie, feeling like a little bit off or a little bit more different than I was used to in the series. Whereas like Waverly in the series is very like bubbly and sweet and light and kind. Yeah, head cheerleader kind of person. In this movie, Waverly is starting a bar fight and holding a jagged bottle to somebody. Like, I'm not saying that like Waverly was the kind of character who would never get drunk or never like go party with her sister. I am saying that Waverly is not generally the kind of character who is like flying off the handle and hitting people randomly or like starting fights. So that was all very new from a character perspective. And I don't know that I felt like the movie took me on that journey to like her being there. It just kind of felt like they dropped us in. They're like, Waverly's really mad now for some reason. You're like, okay.
I picked up on that, and I had seen one episode. I
Yeah.
literally actually did a double take. I was like, is this the same character? Because the only time I've ever seen this character, she was like,
Yes.
and, like all huggy and stuff. And I was like, this one is not. So I picked up on that right away.
Yeah, I don't really put it at the acting because I think Dom was doing a good job, and I think in those scenes where Waverly was more bubbly, it did feel like Waverly. But there's nothing that you can do around like a writing that says Waverly starts a bar fight, right? Like Waverly's just
Sure.
gonna have to start a bar fight, and it doesn't matter if that makes any sense for the character that we've known up until this point. So I feel like I don't know, either we need more
Was that-
backstory on why she's starting fights and like flying off the handle and punching demons in the face, even though she knows that like the demons are after her, stuff like that. Like I was like, she felt way more impulsive, where in the show, she was the less impulsive one to kind of counteract Winona being the more impulsive one.
Sidebar, every time you say fly off the handle,
Yeah.
I think
Wicked,
about the
right?
musical Wicked.
Me too. I just saying that song in my head.
The handle.
You know when
Every
Waverly
time.
is defying gravity?
He loves to defy gravity ever
Wait,
since she was an
Was
angel.
that- like was
Good one. They didn't have budget for her to fly or anything, but
No.
they didn't have budget.
It's
to
kind of
make
like
her real. Like, there
True
was
Blood
nothing.
when what's her name, Suki was a fairy. Like, did we ever see her as a fairy? She was just
oh no, they didn't have
fairy in
fairy
name.
money. They didn't have fairy money by the end of the series either.
So was her like aggressiveness and her flying off the handleness, was that meant to be like our indicator that she feels stifled and that she wants to travel? Because they could have just made it really easy. They could have, at the very beginning, she could have gotten a freaking letter that said, hey, we'd like you to join the Black Badge Division. And she could have been like, oh no, I have to hide it. And like, I don't know, Hawk could have found it in a like drawer. Like, I feel like there were 100 other ways to make that happen. But
yeah, she just
I
she
don't really-
felt she felt just slightly off character, like close enough that it didn't bother me a massive amount, but far enough that I was like, I don't know, she feels a little off. Like her characterization feels a little off. She feels a little too angry, a little too like impulsive, a little bit less Waverly than she's been in the past. So yeah, that was like a little weird. And I agree. Like maybe if they had started it with like her getting that black badge letter and you kind of see her trying to like make the decision, then maybe we would have been like, oh, like maybe these actions are a cry for help, really. But it seemed like they were very comfortable with the idea of her, holding a jagged bottle to somebody, and I was like, what's happening?
Well,
Which is interesting
let's ask
about.
Danny.
Oh yeah, Danny. We should say that we do have our Patreon. So the reason why Danny's able to comment is live is because we are doing this through our Patreon first. We're actually recording 2 episodes today, so you're going to get 2 episodes in advance if you want to be part of our Patreon. But and Danny, if you're still there and you want to tell us a little bit about your opinion on it, but I think that's what's interesting about reboots. And Danny, it's because I'm special. I think that's what's interesting about reboots is I kind of give them a little bit more leeway because, like, you think about that Teen Wolf movie, think about all these other things. They're just garbage. Like, they're so bad and don't even feel like the show. I think why I look at this one a little bit more fonder, even though there's a lot of character work that feels a bit different from the show, it seems, is that it still felt like the show. The actors still felt like they were playing that same. It felt like an episode was last week. It didn't feel like it skipped a beat.
Yes,
and that's something I'll give them because I honestly can't think of any reboot that's been able to do that.
It felt
Oh, Amy, pause. It felt something
immediately like a TV show. Like it just right away. The opener. Oh, did I freeze again?
You did,
just
but we heard
slightly.
you.
We heard you though.
Oh, that's funny. You guys you guys like froze on my end.
Oh
So,
no.
loving the Wi-Fi sitch in my place. But it did immediately. It felt like a TV show. And I think it was just the way that it opened and the way that it felt like very, okay, we got the teaser and then we've got, like this is how the script is written. I did really like that. I like
Now we don't know what Amy likes.
Yeah,
But
we're losing Amy a little bit. So.
almost like it
we'll
was
have
a
to
pilot again for a few.
let's read Danny's comment as
Yeah.
Amy gets the internet a little bit.
Yeah, so Danny says, I overall liked it, but I agree with Morgan that Waverly's character seems slightly off. I still want to know what happened to the random teenager from season 4. Thank you, Danny. I also, having just rewatched season 4 last week, I was also curious about where Rachel, the random teenager from season 4, was. I don't feel like I needed like a deep backstory lore about where Rachel was. I feel like one line when they're maybe talking about things, maybe even when they're mentioning kids, where they could be like, well, Rachel's off in college now. That's it. Like, that's all I needed, technically, was like one line of somebody acknowledging her existence and just where she was. It felt very weird to like not she was like in the series finale, but nobody even mentions her name.
And Danny mentioned Mercedes' character. She did seem like a fan favorite. I didn't remember her very much from the first 2 seasons, but yeah, I was kind of surprised they killed her off from what it seemed like they were placing that character as.
I was also surprised with them killing off Mercedes because she was a fan favorite, and also with the way that they killed off Mercedes because again, things got wacky during the course of the show, so it's fun to just dive in on the lore. But by the end of the show, Mercedes was a vampire. That's right, they were vampires. Anyway, but
what you guys can't see is my confused face. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my confused face. But if you're just listening,
Amy is like, what?
You could probably hear my faces. My faces are very loud.
At another point,
by my coworkers.
Oh, okay. At another point, Doc was also a vampire. Again, things happened. It's a sci-fi show. But so Mercedes was a vampire when we ended the show at the end of season 4. In this movie, I don't know if she was or wasn't a vampire, but if she was, she certainly just sort of rolled over and died. She didn't even attempt to save herself.
No,
cool.
Oh,
it was gruesome too. That was probably like where all the budget went. Was like they like spelled out a title or whatever they spelled out in the beginning. I was like, wow, that's something.
They spelled out the Earp with her limbs. I did think that was cool. I mean, if you're gonna go out in those sort of insane lime green boobs. Yeah.
So there's 2 things I want to talk about left about this movie TV show episode. One is that I liked, and one that I didn't like.
Okay.
The thing I did like, Danny reminds me of in the comments. Danny says, but also my favorite friendship is Nedley and Nicole. I don't know anything about the Nedley character. At least I didn't remember this character at all. When it started, I was like, who's this random guy? And I literally was like, is he meeting this chick for like a sexual tryst in a fishing cabin? That's what I thought was going on.
That would have been a strange way for this show to take a left turn.
I had no idea. I was like, who is this guy? He's clearly gonna die. Like that was anyway.
I was worried about Nedley in the beginning of this movie. I was like, I swear to God, if they kill Nedley, I'm just turning it off.
Yeah, no, I really liked his character. I thought it was entertaining. The second thing, though, I was deeply unimpressed with the villain. I know we kind of mentioned it earlier, but nothing about this villain was interesting. She's supposed to be like the ultimate big bad that essentially gets Doc Holliday killed. You get rid of Peacemaker, and
I know.
You are now like we have completely modified the lore of Wynonna Earp, at least that I understand from my Earp adjacentness, and I am very surprised that they couldn't come up with a better big bad. Like they couldn't have someone from her past that you guys had already met.
I was more interested in the poker gambling beginning villains than I was the other villains, because I thought they were at least unique. I was just like, oh, that's kind of interesting to do like gang related stuff with like gambling. I can't think of a TV show where I've seen like a casino that looks so legit, like in a show. Like I
Yes,
thought
it
that
did
was
look
really
really good.
interesting.
Yeah, I think that would have been
I
more fun. I will say I and I could be wrong. I do believe that that might have been the only Native American characters that have ever showed up in Winona Earp.
Really?
And
And they killed them?
they're demons, so not a great
Yeah.
they're
look,
demon casino
you
owners.
know?
Mm.
Yeah, it's I was like, "Ooh, I don't know. I'm not gonna get into this, but I don't feel like this is great."
No,
But,
I didn't even think about that. That's so true. And I didn't know they it seemed like there was from what I saw in the episode that there probably would have been so many Native American storylines, but that's the first one. That's
There
crazy.
weren't really. There might have been, like, one other character who was, like, I'm trying to remember if the witch there was, like, a one witch character that maybe, but I don't remember, offhand because, again, I watched so much of it compressed into such a short period of time. I thought I could take my leisurely time with it, but then they announced when the movie was gonna, premiere, and I was like, "Oh, that's next week."
Gotta watch it now.
I'm not close
I
enough. But yeah, I agree. I feel like even the casino villains were a little bit more compelling than this woman from her past, which I also feel like they it felt like they almost wanted to do something with the fact that like maybe she wasn't all bad and maybe she was trying to help Winona. But then I feel like then they pivoted again to being like, but she was also really mean and who cares about her? And I was like, I don't I don't know. Like, am I supposed to be like, oh no, Winona did something sort of careless and it hurt somebody who was trying to
And why
help
did you
her?
not see her past? Like who like I just didn't care about the flashbacks. I thought that
I think
really
and
I think my guess is that the stuff about her past was to try to bring new viewers quickly
mhm.
up to speed on like she
Which
killed,
it did do.
there's revenants, she killed her dad by accident because there were demons and the gun, shoots the demons and basically trying to like check those things off of the backstory list without having it just be a long like monologue that she had to do. But yeah, I don't feel like it was the most compelling villain.
No, and I feel like for an episode or a movie entitled Vengeance, like I realize it's been done before. I realize we probably would be sitting there being like, they've done it before. But I would sort of have liked the idea of like 3 or 4 of the villains who she thought she vanquished finding their way back. Like I always kind of like that villain pack where
it almost
you've got
happened,
Yeah.
but then she got pulled back.
yeah, but like I love the idea of I don't know, they're on the ice and you've got 4 villains and 4 main characters who are like standing like right across from each other and they're like we're going to take each other on. Like I like that kind
Speaking
of
of
stuff. I'm a
Teen
sucker for
Wolf,
that.
Teen Wolf always did a really good job with that. They'd have like 10 different they would. They would have all these old villains. They wouldn't want to make new villains. They're like, you remember that
Oh,
old villain? Now they're teaming up with another one.
he's back, baby, and he's got sunglasses this time, so you cool. Yeah, I love Teen Wolf. Uh,
Teen Wolf would always do that. And I guess one of my bigger questions also for the overall like point of this special, does this convince I mean us and other people to get a reboot? Like obviously if you like Wynonna Earp, it does. I thought that her being a sheriff, not the sheriff, her being a deputy was interesting enough. But I think it only convinces the people that love Wynonna Earp to want to watch more Wynonna Earp. I don't think it will convince a new watcher to like the show.
yeah, I don't
If
know. I also was kind of that's why I wanted to kind of ask you guys, but you guys even have more osmosis knowledge of Winona
Mhm.
Earp than like most people who would be if
yeah.
you're a person going in blind. So yeah, I know it worked for me, even though I had these like nitpicks about like characterization or like not liking when a beloved character is killed off. But I don't feel like that will ever stick if they have more. So I guess I'm not that worried about it. But yeah, that was one of my big question marks is like, does this play for somebody who knows nothing about Winona Earp? And honestly, I don't know.
I
I
wouldn't have
don't
just
think
watched
so.
it if we
Yeah.
weren't recording an episode, but there's 2 factors to this. The first is if Doc Holliday had not been killed, I would have been more interested in continuing to
Mm.
watch. The
Yeah.
second is I feel like they put enough hints in there about how okay, so wait, the like agents that are tracking the supernatural, what are they? The black badge, the black
Yeah, Black
hand,
Badge. Yeah.
okay,
You're
the
right,
black
Black
badge.
Badge.
I was like, what? There's the hand of the king.
Also the hand of the king. They're
You
both.
had the bad guy who was clearly a mercenary. Like the guy who eventually killed Doc. You had the mercenaries, and then you had the actual Black Badge, and now you've got Waverly going to join them. I think there's enough hints in there that if they wanted to do an Earp spin-off where it's about the Black Badge, that I might be interested in. Where they're like, imagine they were talking about Egypt. Like, imagine them traveling all over the world and doing this kind of stuff where every episode they're in a new like almost like a FBI International or a CIA kind of a thing. Like that could be very interesting.
I would love
I
that.
might stick around for, and I think
I
it
would
would be
love
a
that.
Waverly episode, and like Winona would show up every once in a while.
My big issue with that is twofold. Is that I actually love Winona, so I would be sad to not
Yeah.
have her and some of the
Sure.
other characters in. Two, I just don't think based on this movie that they would ever have the budget to pull that off in like a in a convincing way. And so it would be like you would basically there'd be like a painted backdrop that's like moving in the wind, and they'd be like, Egypt, we are here. And you'd be like, oh no.
It'd be
You
very
know?
Pretty Little Liars for sure.
It'd be like green screen. Yeah, exactly. Very Pretty Little Liars when Spencer went to Washington that one time. But yeah, so that would be my big fear about that. But I see Danny
Yeah.
said in the chat, Winona and Nicole's friendship is always top tier. Yeah, I really liked that in this special. I thought besides like my critiques about Waverly's characterization, I thought it was just nice to see everybody again. I think had I not just binged 4 seasons, it would have been really nice for me if it had been like 3 years like it was for a lot of other Earpers to like pop back in and be with these characters again and hang out with them again. I feel like the voices still felt very much like all the characters. I remembered why I love Winona and Doc and Waverly and Haught, and like they had nice scenes together and there was like a lot of good humor. I really liked that scene that Winona and Doc have on the porch that felt very like
Porch, dude.
vintage Wynonna Earp.
I
Also,
was like crying, and then that's why I was so annoyed. I got
Yes.
so invested in these
Yes.
characters. I also cinemagraphically, I really there was a moment where like Winona is coming up the hill, and Doc, all injured, is also coming up the hill.
yes.
I wanted from a distance, I wanted him to look at her, and then I wanted her to just see him collapse from a distance. And you don't see that. And I
Oh.
really wanted that moment because I think on like a landscape like that, I think that's a gorgeous like shot. I think that's beautiful. Like that would have been
Yeah.
like her just seeing him just fall down. I think that would have broken my heart more.
I
'cause
know,
I
I've-
was so disconnected from that scene because I'm like,
Sure.
nah, he's fine. Is he
Yeah,
not? Is
he's
he
not-
okay?
he's
I
not.
I was
wanted-
surprised that he was not fine for
Me
sure.
too.
And I think my only other negative for this season, whatever episode special thing is
Special.
honestly, it was too long. I think that
90 minutes.
Winona. I know, like, get me here. I think that a show should be
Let me
40
cook.
something minutes. There's things that I felt like just went on. I like the characters, but there's times where I paused it. I was just like, maybe
Did we need the
this
bar
wasn't-
fight? No.
No, the bar. We probably did not need the bar fight. I also just didn't like the flashbacks. Anytime the flashbacks came, I was like, oh, let's just get back to the character, because I like when they're all just in a room talking to each other. That's
Me
my favorite
too.
parts. And when it's just like the villain and the other guy they added, who cares about him? Why was he there?
To set up the next series. Like that is what I think. I think this is entirely to set up a spinoff. That's my thoughts.
Yeah,
I don't think they're gonna manage to sell it, but it's worth a shot.
it's one of those things where it's like it reminded me that the strengths of this show was always in how good the characters are and how good the actors were
Not
in
the
those
plot.
roles, and not necessarily always the plot, which could sometimes be very loosey goosey, and you'd be like, "Wait, what? Why are there vampires now?" You just kind of go with the flow on the plot. It's not certainly not the budget, even though I've been ragging a lot on the budget, but I feel like they use that the Canadian landscape and all the beautiful snow very much to their advantage. Like those you get those gorgeous shots like Winona and Doc going to each other across the snow-covered field. I must have been miserable to shoot. It must have been like in the negative degrees, but it looks beautiful on screen. But yeah, it's like it's the having the characters together and their interactions with each other. I think all the characters are just especially the core four characters are just so strong and so likable that I would basically want to hang out with them anywhere. And even when I'm angry, I'm like, "Oh, you killed Doc." Like I actually decided to watch it a second time because the first time through, I was like so mad at the end about them killing Doc. I was like, "I'm mad." And so like I watched it Friday and I was like, and then I came back to it today before we recorded it and I was like, "Let me give it another watch through and see if I'm less mad like this time around." And I was, yeah, like once I put aside my anger about the Doc thing, I was like, yeah, it's so nice to just like be with these characters and hang out with them. But I do feel like the villain was a little bit
It just wasn't great. It was a
just
really cookie
yeah.
cutter basic villain. It just felt unpersonal, and I felt like with something like this, it needs to be personal. Even though it was
Yeah.
meant to be super personal, like this was supposed to be a big bad, and it just didn't feel bad enough.
Yeah,
Personally.
it was supposed to connect personally to like Winona's story, but I feel like they didn't really go into that enough. I think my last criticism of the movie um was just like the daughter, like their daughterness of it all, which is that they talk a lot about their daughter and like going to get her and then at the end of the movie she just doesn't. She just
Yeah,
never
that's such a good point.
never
I didn't even
there's
think about that.
arguably there's nothing stopping her right now from going to get
From
that
going and
daughter,
getting her daughter,
but she just
building their
doesn't.
house.
She's just like,
Mm,
"No, we don't want a kid to be in this show if we get rebooted, and we have to come back. We don't wanna have to
yep.
deal with child labor laws." It's like, listen, super valid, but also not gonna get Winona Mother of the Year, let's just put it that way.
Again, then why mention the kid at all? You know, it's just like, oh, just forget the kid existed in the
Yeah,
show.
or like, there's certainly ways to write off, babies from shows,
Was the
for their
actress really pregnant?
protection.
That was the
So
reason why she's
Yes.
in
pregnant? Yeah.
in season 2, the actress was really pregnant, so they wrote the pregnancy into the show. They did a really good job of it,
Yeah, I
actually.
heard it
She
was good.
got to be like a pregnant action star, which was really cool. And then obviously, like all of these shows always are, they had to like, get the baby to safety. So the baby couldn't be on the show because they didn't want to have to deal with babies. And then so they gave the baby away until the Earp curse was broken. But then unfortunately they did break the Earp curse. And then they kind of struggled with like, why isn't anybody going for that baby? And I feel like we are many years later in the timeline of the show. The child is now
5.
5. They still have
Still
not
doesn't want to
gone
see her.
for that baby. Not interested in that baby. Felt
I think,
brutal.
despite the things you bring up, though, here's what's interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I enjoyed
Oh,
this a
me
lot more
too.
than the episode we're going to talk about next.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
yeah,
100%.
we also, spoiler alert, if you are a Patreon, you could hear us chatting about the Penguin HBO series.
And you can
literally
watch
right
it a
after
whole week
this.
What a
early.
difference.
A whole
Yeah,
week early.
the
But
difference
oh
in
my
the
God, like,
pacing and the
oh,
zippiness and the dialogue and the characters, and then you watch the other one and you're like,
yeah.
oof. You know what? I was complaining
I
a little. I was nitpicking on Winona. I'm not going to. It was great.
It was great. I
Which,
enjoyed it. I don't think I
which
would
is
watch it
interesting
again,
because
but I did
Penguin
enjoy
got
it.
such big splash. Like a lot of people love that, and like obviously not besides the
I don't
families, no one's really
dislike
talking
it.
about Winona. So it's
Yeah.
interesting. Like this
The
hidden
fans
gem
all
should
love
be more
it.
talked about. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah. But also,
that's
even
kind
it
of
should have
the
been on
considering you
HBO and not Tubi.
If it was on HBO, if they could get that HBO money, imagine what the Hellhounds would have looked like.
they would have so many nice shoes at that
Their
point.
their boots would have been beautiful.
I honestly love though that you thought they were actual dogs.
I
Like
thought they
that
were
they were
supposed to
supposed
be
to be
dogs,
dogs.
and I was like,
That
"What?
kills
I don't
me.
understand what's happening. What in the party city am I
I'm gonna do some
watching?"
research here.
But yeah, it is one of those things where it's just because the show has like a bigger budget or more prestige doesn't necessarily mean it's more fun to watch. And Winona always delivers on good characters and fun times, and I can always give them that because I always have a good time watching this show. When I watched it the second time around, I was like, you know what, this is fun. I'll give them that. And like the Doc and
Aw.
Winona stuff was so good, and the relationships that they have between the characters and like the romantic relationships. I was like, the Wayhaught relationship and the Winona and Doc relationship are both so good, and I'm always so invested in both of them. And I
Mhm.
think even though even though Wayhaught kind of ends the special separate it, separate air quotes separate it, they still feel like a very strong couple that loves each
Yeah.
other, that like, jokes back and forth. And I just really appreciate the representation of having like a queer couple that I'm not worried that they're going to break up or somebody's gonna die.
You feel confident that their relationship is on solid enough footing that she can spend a year abroad, and you know that they're still going to have they called it a long distance marriage. And I
Exactly.
honestly really like that because it's essentially like someone who's got someone in the family who's being deployed. Like that's how it works. That's what they've set up for, and they're totally ready for that. So yeah, I here's my question. If they bring a spin-off or a reboot based on this, are you guys in?
I mean, I
Uh,
think so. I think I'd
I'll
watch
give it a
it.
shot. I'll try.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I was
first off,
intrigued enough.
they gotta
I think
bring
for this
Doc back.
podcast, we'd watch it.
Oh
Yeah, for this
yes.
podcast, we would watch it. They've gotta bring Doc back. It's gonna be weird. He's gonna be a sexy zombie or whatever. Listen, it's not like weirder things haven't happened on the show. Like I mentioned, he was a vampire briefly.
Yes.
So why not?
The end of that Den of Geek interview literally has him saying that. He's like, look, I've died many times. He's like, it's not like I shaved the mustache off. We can fix this.
As long
Death
as the
is better
mustache
than
is
shaving
here.
off the mustache.
As long
He's
as
like,
I
now
still
that
have.
would have been tragic. And I was like, that's hilarious.
Like,
That's
what's going on with
so
that? I
funny.
mean, obviously he should because he looks hot, but like he's
Great.
been having that mustache for 3 years after the show was done.
I feel like he truly was just like, you know what? This is a look that is working for me. And sir, yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's a good mustache. It's a good look. Yeah.
I was
So
thinking about how because he has all the gray and then the black mustache. I'm like, does he dye
does
the
he dye
mustache
the
and
I
that's
saw that
mustache?
it?
too.
I was
like,
also
oh my God.
wondering about that. I was wondering about that. These are the
It's
hard hitting
actually
questions.
Winona at night when he's sleeping. She's sitting there going and like painting their part a bit darker,
Doodling it in.
or she's putting like salt and pepper on the outside.
That's so funny.
Like I barely know this character. I can already see her being like, no,
No, that would
turquoise sparkles.
absolutely that would be something that character would do. Yeah, so
All right.
I think that's gonna
Should we start wrapping up?
I think that's gonna wrap it up for our thoughts on Wynonna Earp Vengeance. I think we're all in if they make more, and hopefully they do. And if you're a Wynonna Earp fan, or if you're just somebody who's interested, stream it for free on Tubi. There's really no downside, or put it on
Streaming
in
on
a
another room.
spare room
In the
and just let it
background.
play all day. Do you. But we're all very much, at least I'm very much hoping that they get a chance to do some more because they always have so much fun when they do get to do it. So
Mhm.
we'll see. I guess we're sort of in a wait and see period to see if there will be more Winona. Okay, so that is going to. Oh, we did get some feedback about Batman Caped Crusader from Mark, which I'm going to read really quickly. Mark says, regarding Cape Crusader, I really liked it. Sure, the villains are different from what we're used to, but Batman is largely the same, and that's enough for me. When you spoke about it being released in a binge model, even though it's an episodic show, I remembered that it was originally announced for Cartoon Network and Max, which tend to release shows week to week. And personally, I neither need nor want long form television where we're supposed to care about character growth. That's not why I watch TV. I'm perfectly happy with old school episodic TV where the continuing characters are there to solve whatever the week's issue is and everything resets the following week. So Kirk has to let the ultimate love of his life die in order to keep Hitler from winning World War II, and we never speak of it again. I've never binged a show, and I doubt I ever will. Even Sandman, I watch pretty much one episode per week, even though they were all right there on a Netflix account I borrowed for that purpose. So basically, maybe Batman Cape Crusader would work better if you decided to create your own weekly schedule and just watch them one at a time.
Yeah.
That's a good piece of feedback. I do feel like the binge model was not its friend, but maybe one a week. That could be better. Okay, so where are we all on the internet? Kat, what is up with you?
At Comic Uno is the best place to find me. And I do have a Kickstarter going on, Nightmare in Wonderland. It's a queen version of Sleeping
Mhm.
Beauty and her ex, Alice from Alice in Wonderland. And they're stuck in a nightmare version of Wonderland. So check that one out.
Drama. Okay, Amy, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Instagram, Amy_HYP. You can also find me in Chicago in a few days. So I will be at the CreationNet Star Trek convention representing Hero Within from the 27th through the 29th at Chicago. So if you guys are in the area, I know nothing about Chicago. I'm going on my own.
Probably
Let's
get some
pizza.
deep dish pizza. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
you gotta get
so
one of
excited
those.
for this pizza.
You'll like it. There's a lot of sauce.
I know I will.
So much
There's a
sauce,
lot
so
of
much
sauce.
dough.
I'm so excited for this.
This is
If
gonna
you
be
guys
the
have
pizza of your
recommendations,
dreams.
please send them to me. But yeah, let me know.
Definitely.
Find me on Instagram. Hit me up. Amy_HYP.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic, and also as a co-host on Supergirl Radio, where we finally got back into Supergirl Rebirth, the comics. It's been a while. I feel like those comics are several years old now, but we're making our way. We're gonna get to the end of it, so you should join us Tuesday nights when we go live on the DCTV podcast. YouTube channel. And speaking of YouTube channels, you should also check out our YouTube channel if you're listening to this the audio version. It's at the Legendary Ladies. You can also find us on Patreon and become a Patreon supporter like Danny and chat with us in the chat and get episodes sometimes a whole week, sometimes multiple weeks early. You can find us on patreon.com/the Legendary Ladies. It's the Legendary Ladies, right? I'm not speaking out
Pretty
of
sure. I
yeah,
think
the
so.
Legendary
You're
Ladies.
correct.
You can also find us on Twitter at legends_podcast and on Instagram at the Legendary Ladies. And send us an email at the legendaryladies@gmail.com. So until next time, stay legendary.